No, because they can win the last two games and X and 2, and everyone else can end X and 2.
No,
we're
it's
talking
going to be
about.
2x and 1. If you lose to us, then there can't be fewer than
We're playing
2x
UVA
and
next. We could have two
Oh,
losses.
yeah,
They
you're
could have two
right.
losses. You could have two losses, and Chicago could have two
1. Oh,
losses.
you're right.
Yeah, we get it. We get it.
Single elimination.
But thanks for the offer.
No, but if you lose to us and Chicago cannot both have 2 losses.
All right, we're not throwing the game. Thanks.
Well, did our best. What can you do?
And this is a packet by VCU and Berkeley.
Dude, this is awful.
All right, guys.
You guys happy with buzzers? Everybody can test those? And...
I would.
Okay.
That's the bonus.
If a set of expressions has this property in a ring P, then there exists a tuple of rational numbers that can be substituted into the expressions which will also have this property in P by a theorem of David Hilbert. A function that has a positive leading coefficient, coprime coefficients, and this property will produce infinitely many primes by the Bunyakovsky conjecture. By Gauss's lemma, a function that has this property with respect to the integers will have it over the rationals as well. For a collection of coefficients, if there exists a number p such that p doesn't divide the leading coefficient,
Irreducible.
that is correct.
Nice.
That's Eisenstein's criterion.
Modern editions of this book indicate that the author was given the name Flaming Rainbow and are annotated by transcripts of Raymond Damali. Named this 1932 book by John G. Nyhart, which tells the story of a medicine man belonging to the Oglala Sioux tribe and concludes with a depressing account of Wounded Knee.
Is this Bury My Heart, Wounded Knee? Or Red Cloud, what's his name? Speaks. What's his name? Speaks. Something speaks.
What do you got?
Red Cloud speaks.
Black Elf
Black Elf
Speaks.
Speaks.
This psychologist, who got Nyhart's book translated into German, wrote about his own encounter with Chief Mountain Lake in his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections. He also coined the term collective unconscious and wrote psychological types.
You.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't collect consciousness.
Yeah, this Swiss-American anthropologist is best known for his fictional account of Pueblo tricksters entitled The Delight Makers, though he also took trips to Peru and Bolivia, chronicled in the islands of Titicaca and Coati.
Fuck. Yeah. Swan.
Adolf Bandelier. So 10 points. A character in this novel gets in trouble for putting up double entendre signs in a hospital, such as one reading Sodom and Sodom and gonorrhea above the venereal ward. The dying words of a character in this novel are reported to sound like the last grin, though another character later realizes it was a reference to the last of 3 green bottles, which originally appear in the house of Mad Medico. A baby girl is given a male name that means may the path never close, Amechina, at a naming ceremony in this novel. Protests regarding water restrictions in Abazone open this novel, in which a character is nicknamed Samsonite because he uses a stapler to torture people. One of its protagonists...
Anthills of the Civil.
That's right.
Good buzz, dude.
Answer the following about early characters in Norse mythology. Odin and his brothers Vili and Ve teamed up to kill this primordial being, then created the world and the seas from his body and blood. Yeah, Odin, Vili, and Ve are the sons of this member of the Aesir and Bestla, a frost giant. His father Buri was licked free by Audhumla. What do you got?
Born.
Yes. This frost giant, a grandson of Ymir, and his wife are the only ones to survive the flood caused by Ymir's blood, and is thus the progenitor of all later frost giants.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Rough.
Bergelmir.
Bergelmir.
So, 20 points.
I wasn't paying attention.
This text defines a state of enclosing reserve that may manifest itself in a tyrant that needs a confidant who will be killed after being used. In examining how the lack of possibility contributes to the title phenomenon, it compares a foolish determinist to King Midas and a fatalist to a man who has no possibility to breathe. This book's second portion considers the Socratic definition of ignorance to ask whether men are aware of the title phenomenon. Its first part defines the human being as spirit and notes that the self is not the relation.
Sickness unto death.
That's right.
Good job, dude.
While journeying to see his friend, the protagonist of this novel is told that his estate has been sold to the title character Lord Fitzowen. In this novel by Clara Reeve that focuses on Sir Philip Harclay's visit to the estate of his friend Lord Lovell, ending with Philip successfully defeating Walter Lovell, who had earlier murdered his cousin.
After I've heard from Clara Reeve, so if you
Yeah, I didn't have that. This is
absentee.
The Old English Baron. Reeve described the Old English Baron as a literary offspring of the Castle of Otranto, a work by Horace Walpole in this genre of English literature. Matthew Lewis's The Monk is another book in this genre. Yeah, in this Gothic novel, a jinn called the Gior forces the title Abbasid Caliph to sacrifice 50 of his empire's children as part of a plan to guide him to the Palace of Fire. Yeah, you get 20. This man was sent on a diplomatic trip with Bishop Charles McIlvaine and Archbishop John Joseph Hughes to secure European support in the wake of the Trent Affair. He chronicled that trip in his book, Letters from Europe and the West Indies. He was known as the Wizard of the Lobby, but his rival, John Hubbard, may have been the first to dub him the Dictator while trying to bankrupt his enterprise, the Agriculturalist. This man coined the disdainful nickname Sweet Sandy Whiskers for Martin Van Buren, and the name for a group originally called the Holy Alliance, which split into the conservative Hunkers.
Weed?
The second story in this text is about a man who fashions a wax crocodile, which comes to life on contact with water and eats the man who slept with his wife. Name this ancient document discovered by a namesake British explorer, which consists of 5 tales about magicians. Yes. All stories in the Westcar Papyrus are told by the sons of this 4th dynasty pharaoh who commissioned the Great Pyramid at Giza after succeeding his father Sneferu. Yeah, the Westcar Papyrus was likely written in the Middle Kingdom, which was founded by this powerful 11th dynasty pharaoh. This son of Intef III installed governors in both Upper and Lower Egypt to control the power of nomarchs, ending the First Intermediate Period.
Do you have a guess? Almost. I don't think that's right, but.
What do you got?
Seti.
Mentuhotep II.
Okay, never mind. We're
20. At the upper right of this painting, a soldier appears above an overturned chair and a torn prayer book. At the bottom of this painting, one can make out a mother fleeing with her child.
Microspiction.
One of these theorems is true for the steady state case and was proven by Gallivati and Cohen, while another of these theorems, named for Crookes, can be used to prove the Jarzynski equality. And these theorems would state that the ratio of the probability of some form of work or entropy production to the possibility of the reverse process is proportional to E raised to a constant times the amount of work or entropy produced.
These theorems.
What you got?
Reversibility theory.
Fluctuation theorems. Those mathematically describe the statistical nature of this statement, which states that irreversible processes generate entropy. Yeah. Give your answer in terms of dq and t. The second law of thermodynamics can be described by the Clausius inequality, which states that for a heat differential dq and a temperature T, the integral over a cyclic process of this function of dq and T must be less than or equal to 0.
So it's dq over t.
That's a great for this.
Toss up. A hexamer of copper hydride bonded to this compound is known as Stryker's reagent. This compound is the most famous member of a class of compounds for which the Tolman...
That's not bound to that. That's how you parse that.
Yeah. Sorry. For which the Tolman cone angle was developed to describe two equivalents of this compound, a chlorine atom and carbon monoxide bond of iridium in Bosca's complex. It can be used to reduce azides to amines via hydrolysis in one reaction and is used alongside diethyl azo-dicarboxylate to convert alcohols into various functional groups in another reaction. Those reactions are named for Staudinger and Mitsunobu. This compound is converted to an oxide via the elimination of an oxophosphatine intermediate in a reaction where it reacts with a carbonyl to form a phosphonium ylide, which is then converted to an alkene. For tempo, its name is organophosphorus compound used in the Wittig reaction.
Trimethyl
This man was director of education in the Kingdom of Tonga for 3 years. Named the structural functionalist anthropologist who wrote the Andaman Islanders.
Radcliffe Brown.
Alfred Radcliffe Brown defines symmetrical and asymmetrical versions of this sort of bond, in which one party is required to take no offense. This type of bond titles the 4th chapter of Structure and Function in Primitive Society.
Joking relationship?
Yeah, in Anxiety and Ritual, this thinker adapted Radcliffe Brown's theory of magic for behavioral studies. He examined settlement patterns in English villages of the 13th century and proposed a theory of stratification in social behavior.
Angles.
George Homans. 20. Toss-up. In accordance with a Delphic oracle, one figure by this name was invited to rule over a tribe called the Dolonsi because he showed hospitality to them in their travels. As their ruler, that figure constructed a wall from Cardia to Pactia to repel their enemies, the Absinthians. A second figure by this name married Hegesippala, the daughter of Olorus, to tighten the hold on land he inherited when his brother Stesagoras had his head split open by an axe. This man's daughter, Elpenice, may have paid his fines off after he was charged with treason for a failed expedition against Peros. That man of this name ruled as tyrant of the Thracian Chersonese, then most defamed for conquering Lemnos and Imbros. That father of Cimon the Younger is best remembered for his victory at
Yes. Miltiades?
a monk named Gian describes a man being encased in the title entity in a loosely interpreted version of his country's tale of the Rosafa castle called the Three-Arched Bridge. Name this author who critiqued the home country in a novel in which Mark Elam is placed at odds with his family, the Quatrilli, when the Sultan forces him to work at the title Palace of Dreams. Yeah, this first novel by Kadir is one of his most highly regarded. Its Italian title character is tasked with finding the remains of soldiers from his country who died in Albania in World War II.
Am I doing this right?
I think so.
General of the Dead Army.
That's right. The David Bellows translation of a Kadir novel with this title was published under the title The Siege. In a Kafka novel of this title, the land surveyor K struggles to enter the title edifice.
Let's try that.
Castle.
31. Toss up. A composition by this man calls for 2 bassoons, 2 contrabassoons, and 4 trombones, but only uses them for a few bars in the first movement, which is marked Sostenuto tranquillo ma cantabile. Another work by this composer asks the chorus to repeat only the words Domine Deus Noster in its first 10 sections. In the first movement of a composition by this man, a 24-bar theme forms the basis of a canon that opens in 2 parts in the bases and adds a new part every 25 minutes until it becomes an 8-part canon. Interest in this composer of an Opus 44 Miserere was revived by the 1992 publication.
I'm sorry, that's not right. Correct.
You're right.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Correct.
The title character of this ballet has a dream in which the knights Jean de Brienne and Abdurrahman duel each other. Name this ballet inspired by Hungarian tradition in which the title character marries Jean de Brienne.
Oh, it's, I don't know, Raimonda maybe?
Sure.
Raimonda.
That's right. Raimonda was choreographed by this man, who also choreographed La Bayadere. He frequently collaborated with Cesar Pugni on other ballets, such as The Little Humpbacked Horse.
Lazinov wrote it, right? So it's not that.
It's not pedophile. It's the other guy.
Which guy?
Just
Kativa.
Yeah.
Oh,
Marius
it is?
Petiva also choreographed the
Oh.
ballet Copilio, whose music was written by this composer. He also composed the music to Lakme.
Delete.
Toss up. This poem refers to the mystical ladder of divine love presented in the dark night of the soul in its late mention of the figure of 10 stairs. Its fourth section asks, will the sunflower turn to us? Will the clematis stray down, bend to us? And describes a time when the light is still, at the still point of the turning world. This poem describes the desiccation, evacuation, and inoperancy of the worlds of sense, fancy, and spirit that occur after a descent into the world of perpetual solitude. In its first section, a bird tells a poet to round the corner into the first world, and warning the poet that humankind cannot bear much reality, as it guides them through a place whose leaves were full of children laughing and hiding. This poem features the recurring image of a rose garden at
I think it's Bert Norton.
You're right.
Four quartets. All right.
I was thinking that, but.
You did it.
This event was carried out by a group known as the Junta de los Ocho, led by Pablo Rodriguez, and in its wake, the country was ruled by a council of 5 governors called the Pentarchy. Named this coup d'etat, which originated at a base called Camp Columbia, and was supported by a group of civilians under Sergio Carbó.
Sure.
I don't know, is that a thing?
That's a thing.
Cocaine.
The revolt of the sergeants. Gerardo Machado, who was ousted in the revolt, tried to gain support by appealing to his family's service in this conflict, which began in 1868 when sugar mill owner Carlos Manuel de Cespedes proclaimed independence from Spain. It was followed by a shorter conflict called the Little War.
10 years war.
Yeah, after deposition of Machado, Fulgencio Batista ruled Cuba until overthrown by this man on the 26th of July.
Castro.
Yeah,
Okay, let's do the next one.
20 points. Toss it. Under this government, a celebration known as the Double Centenary Exposition was held, and in its honor, a marble mosaic windrose was donated from South Africa. The church-controlled Radio Renaissance became this government's official organ, and its constitution was allegedly based on the encyclical Rerum Novarum, as decreed by its lawmaking body, the Corporative National Assembly. During its last years, it waged the Ultramar War, or Overseas War, which contributed to it being replaced.
So like the Estado Novo in Portugal.
That's right.
Yeah, it was just that.
Okay, good job.
This reaction begins when 2 namesake particles react and form a deuteron. Name this fusion reaction that's the primary method of generating light and heat in the sun.
Okay, we're not touching.
The problem of the short time span of diprotons was solved by this physicist who proposed an irreversible mechanism of beta decay in the proton-proton cycle. With Jerry Brown, he names a model of supernova collapse.
Fuck. Brown and
Yeah.
Nathan.
Yep. In the proton-proton 2 branch, atoms of this isotope collide with hydrogen to produce helium atoms, producing energy. It remains unburned in brown dwarfs.
So,
Is it lithium? Doesn't make sense though. I don't know.
like lithium.
Prompt.
Lithium 6.
7.
Damn.
24.
I don't think. Oh, yeah.
Score check?
So that was 10 on the bonus?
20.
20.
That's right. So at the half, the score stands at 110
Yep.
to 195.
Narrow?
Here we go.
Go.
This structure is notoriously called a Trojan horse in Sanford Quinter's book Requiem for the City at the End of the Millennium. To help engineer this masterpiece, 9-ton cast steel gerberettes were used to its its long trusses. Along with a building in New York City, Nam June Pike broadcasted Good Morning Mr. Orwell from this building. Jean Tinguely's kinetic sculptures of a firebird and a fox can be found at Stravinsky Fountain.
This is the Renzo piano thing. Centre Pompidou. Centre Pompidou. What?
Yeah.
Centre
Did he
Pompidou.
say the right thing to be
Centre
Centre
Pompidou.
Pompidou?
Yeah. Very fast, yeah.
Alright. Early smaller examples of these structures were found at meditation halls known as chaitya. Name these dome structures, which are guarded by Torana gates and house sacred relics of the Buddha. They include the great one at Sanchi, India, and 72 of them at Barabadur, which contain Buddhist statues. These female fertility figures are often used to decorate the entrances and gates to stupas. Their full figures are depicted holding branches as part of the group of Salabhajanika figures. In myth, they serve the god of wealth Kubera in his Alaka kingdom.
Oh.
Yakshas?
Yakshas?
I think that's right.
Okay. Yaksha?
Yeah. The Salabhajika figure imitates the posture of Queen Maya, the mother of Siddhartha Gautama. She took that posture shortly after giving birth to the Buddha while grasping the branch of a Shaila tree in this Nepalese city.
Fuck. What was
I don't know.
not Kathmandu?
Yeah.
It's another Nepalese city. Kathmandu.
Lumpini. So, 20 there. Toss up. The QED one-loop correction to the electron's value for this quantity equals the fine structure constant divided by 2 pi. QCD predicts that the ratio of this quantity for the proton to this quantity for the neutron equals -3/2. For an electron, QED predicts that this quantity's classical version to be multiplied by a factor of 2.002, an improvement in accuracy over the factor of 2 predicted by the Dirac equation.
Magnetic moment?
Yes.
Yes!
In this novel, Crazy Beau Adair is arrested, and the theology student Harold Newton Day goes abroad after he's caught copulating with a goat, which prevents him from marrying the protagonist. Name this novel in which the girl Bitter Plant returns to her birth country and marries Juban after being adopted by white missionaries and sent to study in England for 7 years.
It sounded like 5, it's not.
Yeah.
Say something.
Banana Bottom.
Oh,
This
fuck.
poem by the author of Banana Bottom enjoins the speaker's kinsmen to, for their 1,000 blows, deal 1 death blow, and asks, what though before us lies the open grave?
I think that's, I mean, if we must die.
Yeah. Those 2 works are written by this major figure of the Harlem Renaissance who wrote Home to Harlem.
Okay.
20. Toss-up. This character refers to absinthe as the Glaucus Witch, or La Sorcière Glauquée, in one of his many slips into French. The narrator decides that either hungry or dim is La Motte Juste for this character who claims to read Shelley in domino rooms to break up his evenness. This character writes a poem that describes the sounds of...
Enoch Soames?
Good luck.
Excellent buzz.
This partner of Richard Arkwright was a superintendent of Jedediah Strutt's cotton mill in the English town of Belper. Name this man who then secretly emigrated to America and became known as the father of the American Industrial Revolution by organizing the textile industry.
Slater.
Yeah, Slater created a textile making system known by the name of this U.S. state, which was the site of the Gaspee affair.
Yes.
Brown.
Yeah, Francis Lowell improved on Slater's system partly by using the finances of this man. This man's nephew of the exact same name was the publisher of the Los Angeles Times during the Spanish-American War, who coined the phrase, "You are either with me or against me," when the LA Times building was bombed in 1910.
McNamara?
No.
No, that's
He
a
would
brother's.
do
Fuck,
too.
my bad.
Wilson.
Harrison Gray Otis.
Oh, shit. That's how many I'm about.
20 points.
Ah, shit, okay.
Toss-up. The Massachusetts-born Episcopalian William Reed Huntington added to this series by providing a piece titled For an American Point of View. 4 pieces towards the end of this collection are entitled Catina Patrum, while 2 others examine the doctrine of John Cozin. A small number of works in this collection were written by Hurl Froud, but he died of tuberculosis before it was completed. The final piece in this collection caused a firestorm by arguing that the 39 articles were compatible with the Council of Trent and general Catholic practice. Written over a period from 1833 to 1841, the more notable authors of this collection included John Keble and
Racks for our time.
That's fine.
I cannot remember the name of that. I'm like, it's an Oxford thing. Thank you.
An ANSA zirconium metallocene Ziegler nata catalyst will polymerize propylene to this orientation. Name this type of polymer in which most of the side groups are on the same side of the backbone.
Isotactic.
Yeah. Tacticity describes the general trend of this kind of isomerism at each polymer backbone atom. Molecules displaying this type of isomerism have the same structure, but their atoms differ in orientation in 3-dimensional space.
Oh. Same structure, so not constitution. Confirmation.
They just want stereoisomerism.
Oh, yeah.
Molecules displaying axial chirality, such as BNAP, can display this form of stereoisomerism, in which steric effects prevent a molecule from rotating freely about one of its bonds.
This is what confirmation was. Confirmation.
Atroprismerism.
I know.
So 10 points there. 15. Early rulers of this dynasty were often advised by members of the Bunag family, a Persian house descended from the Sheikh Ahmad, starting with Dis Bunag, one of the 2 sons of Akka Mahasena. A member of this dynasty appointed Gustave Roland Jaquemin as his advisor and was embarrassed by the Front Palace crisis, in which his
Like shockery.
The meeting scene in this room, which is just above the fireplace, depicts the family dwarf. Name this room in the Palazzo Ducale, which is no longer thought to have been a bridal chamber, despite its name. A bunch of putti look down at the viewer in this room's Oculus painting.
Yeah, I think it's in Medici Palace, maybe.
Sure, we should say something like that. Marriage room.
Camera della Sposi. The paintings in the Camera della Sposi were made by this Italian painter, known for the Dead Christ.
Maintain it.
Yeah, Mantua also contains this other estate that was built for Federico Gonzaga. In its Sala dei Gianti, Giulio Romano painted the Fall of the Giants.
Oh, yeah, Villa Barberini.
Sure.
Okay.
I don't know.
Villa Barberini.
Palazzo del Te.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know. That's
So at the 3/4 mark, I have a score of 285 Maryland to 140 Penn.
I have
295.
295. So we had 195 before, right?
Yeah.
10 and 20 makes 225.
Yep.
Yeah.
10 and 20. Oh, there's my mistake. Got it.
So,
Yes.
Toss-up 16. This author used phrases like, where the light of the senses in lofty flames did rise, and where to the flow of youth God still showed himself, to describe the past in a poem that asks, what in this world should we all do with love and with faith? This author's brother Bernhard is referred to as the angel in the house in a novel that depicts his time living with Celestin Just. He outlined a universal study of science and poetry called encyclopedistics in his Notes for an Encyclopedia, Das Allgemeine Brûlon. The Athenaeum published a collection by this author whose second section opens by asking, must the morning always return? Will the despotism of the earthly never cease? That collection by this man ends with the poem Longing for Death.
The balls.
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Michael Dummett concluded that this argument was invalid in metaphysical necessity. Name this argument introduced by St. Anselm, which proves the existence of God since nothing greater than him can be conceived. Yeah, this philosopher from the school of Isfahan also used the ontological argument to prove the existence of God. The thought of this medieval Iranian philosopher is collected in The Four Journeys.
Okay, so maybe like, yeah, Al-Hindi.
Mula Sadra. Galnilo of Marmoudier's In Defense of the Fool is an attack on the ontological argument. His text refutes the ontological argument by having readers imagine a lost one of these things.
Island.
Yeah.
Say we can still win.
20. Toss up. In the Metamorphoses, this figure states that she has often read the names on empty tombs while giving an impassioned speech in which she reminds her husband that his father-in-law controls winds that may create deadly red lightning in the sky. This woman's story in the Metamorphoses features a digression in which Iris enters the cave from which Lethe springs to ask Morpheus to transform into an ethereal version of this woman's husband. This queen of Trachis is unable to convince her husband to abandon his sea journey to the Oracle of Delphi, causing her to incessantly worry about his doomed fate. Yes.
Good job, Dave.
Targets of this event included its namesake, nicknamed the Harpist, and General Kuno Graf von Moltke, who was called Sweetie. Named this 1907 affair centering on accusations by a journalist about homosexuality appeared in the Kaiser Wilhelm II's circle.
Pardon, Orlando.
Yeah, another headache during Wilhelm II's reign was the diplomatic firestorm that ensued when he sent a telegram congratulating Paul Kruger for repelling this aborted raid on the Transvaal Republic.
Jameson.
Yeah, Wilhelm II's interest was set against the Entente Cordiale in the United States after the 1906 Algeciras Conference, so he and this Secretary of State for the Navy passed a series of naval laws in an attempt to catch up with British naval power.
Say we're getting a 20. What can we say? Mueller? Sure.
You already got mentioned. Von Bülow.
Tirpitz, von Tirpitz.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay. So can we get a score check?
How many?
Yeah, 325, 170.
Yeah.
Which they got 20.
They got 20.
20
on
down.
those.
Okay.
One protein involved in this process contains an arginine-rich bridge helix within its REC lobe. 11 proteins in this process form a seahorse-shaped complex called cascade. The aforementioned protein involved in this process carries out its activity using its HNH and RUDC domains. The nucleotide sequence NGG must be present in order for this process to occur. That sequence is called a PAM. In this process, a tracer RNA base pairs with a CrRNA to form an sgRNA. In this process, a guide RNA guides a nuclease to a protospacer motif. Then a double-strand break is created in the...
So like CRISPR.
Identify the following works of 19th century Latin American literature. The protagonist of this two-part gaucho epic by Jose Fernandez has a night-long singing duel with a black singer and escapes from captivity after the plague death of his friend Sergeant Cruz.
Martin Theater. Yes.
Yeah, Benito Santiago is inspired by a Shakespeare play to claim that his son Ezekiel was fathered by his friend Escobar, who supposedly had an affair with Bento's wife Capitu in this 1899 novel. Yeah, this Jose Fernandez de Lazardi novel is considered to be the first novel written and published in Latin America. It takes its name from the nickname given to its protagonist, Pedro Sarmiento.
Oh, Facundo, right? Isn't that thing?
That's right. That's not
Okay, I don't
it.
know.
Facundo.
The mangy parrot.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
It is a thing, it's just not that.
Okay.
A balanced path of a certain quantity in this formalism is achieved with assumptions that ensure its predictions correspond to Nicholas Caldor's stylized facts. When this formalism's central equation satisfies Euler's homogeneity theorem, there is no need to specify the ownership of firms, since their profit in the long run is zero. Mankiw, Romer, and Weil proposed augmenting this formalism with a distinction between human and physical capital. An extension of this formalism that adds the assumptions of Walrasian equilibrium and endogenous household savings is named for...
Solo model?
That's right.
Good job.
An incomplete 1896 symphony dedicated to the beloved god calls for 4 of its 8 horn players to double on these instruments, which made their first symphonic appearance in the C-sharp minor adagio second movement of that composer's second symphony. Name these brass instruments that were originally developed to provide the right tone for an 1869 opera's Valhalla motif.
Oh, these are Wagner tubas, right?
Oh, that's right.
That's right. The aforementioned symphonies were composed by this Austrian whose success constantly revised his works, perhaps most famously adding a finale movement titled Volksfest to his romantic 4th symphony. Bruckner's C major setting of this hymn is sometimes added to his unfinished 9th symphony. Jean-Baptiste Lully smashed his foot with his baton while conducting his own setting of this hymn. 30 points.
Good job, dude.
And last toss-up is, James Jackson Storrow headed a commission charged with investigating grievances prior to this event. Legislation put forth by Albert Pillsbury.
Like the Boston police strike.
That's good.
That's a fucking...
These things occur approximately once in every 300 nucleotides, since they must be present in at least 1% of the human population. Name these variations of the human genome, which are a difference in one nucleotide in a sequence.
Single nucleotide polymorphism.
That's right. In this technique used to analyze DNA, restriction enzymes cut target sites to create DNA fragments, which are then separated using either gel electrophoresis or a southern blot.
So,
It's restriction fragment length polymorphism. In lipid polymorphism, phospholipids tend to adopt one of three phases: micellar, bilayer, or this shape. This phase is especially preferred in more acidic conditions.
lamellar.
Hexagonal.
Four,
10.
right?
Thank you guys.
Good job.
Eric, I appreciate the Striker.
Yeah.
Dude,
that's the William Stryker.
Chris, I need a way to remember that it's copper phosphate. He's like, well, okay, what do you think? In X-Men,
Yeah.
Striker's a cop.
Yeah.
He's like, I was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we sit here. Which side do you want?
We can stay on this side. Well,
So yeah, we moved to Rob.
so if we win, we're in a
We're still in finals. We're still in finals. Okay, I'm good.
All right, if we win, we're in the final.